The sunlight streamed softly through the tall glass windows of the grand ballroom, filling the room with golden light that danced across the marble floor. A gentle melody played in the background, violins carrying a tune of love and promises. Guests smiled, cameras flashed, and laughter echoed through the air. But in the middle of all this beauty and celebration, Laya stood frozen at the altar. Her heart was pounding so loudly that it drowned out the music. She looked perfect, dressed in a gown worth more than she had ever earned in her life, surrounded by flowers that smelled of luxury and wealth. But to her, this wasn't a dream come true. It was just a show, a deal, a favor, a lie. She had agreed to marry a man she barely knew, believing it was only a pretend wedding to help him close an important business deal. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of love to heal broken hearts, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Thread. Your support helps us share stories that touch hearts and remind the world that miracles can happen when we least expect them. Laya had grown up quietly in a small corner of the city, working 2 jobs just to survive. She never had the time or freedom to dream big. Life had taught her that dreams belonged to people who could afford them. When her mother fell seriously ill and hospital bills started piling up, desperation forced her to accept an offer that felt almost unreal. Ethan Vale, a wealthy but reclusive businessman known for his cold and distant nature, needed someone to stand beside him at a wedding that wasn't supposed to be real. The deal was simple. She would pretend to be his bride for one day in exchange for enough money to pay her mother's medical bills and maybe start a small business afterward. When she first met Ethan, he seemed detached, almost mechanical, like a man made of glass and steel. He barely looked at her, spoke politely but without warmth, as if this arrangement was just another contract to sign. Yet there was something in his eyes, a quiet sadness that hinted at a story he had buried deep inside. Laya didn't ask questions. She just wanted to do her part, smile for the cameras, and disappear when it was all over. The day of the wedding came. Laya played her role perfectly. She smiled as they exchanged vows that weren't meant to be real. She held his hand, smiled for the flashing cameras, and told herself again and again, "It's just an act." But when she looked up at him under the soft glow of sunlight through the stained glass windows, something inside her shifted. His eyes no longer seemed empty. They carried a depth, a warmth she hadn't seen before. Then came the moment that changed everything. Just as the officiant said, "I now pronounce you husband and wife," and applause filled the room, Ethan leaned close to her. His breath brushed against her ear, and in a trembling whisper he said, "Nothing will be canceled." For a moment, Laya couldn't understand. Nothing will be canceled? What did he mean? This wedding was supposed to be fake, an act. But when she turned to look at him, his eyes told her something completely different. They were full of emotion, raw and real. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. Laya smiled automatically, walked beside him as people congratulated them, but inside her thoughts were spinning. Every glance from him, every small squeeze of her hand, felt different, heavier with meaning. Later, when the guests had gone and the light outside faded into evening gold, she finally asked him what he had meant by those words. That was when Ethan told her the truth. Months ago, he had been engaged to a woman he believed he loved, but she had left him days before the wedding, humiliating him in front of everyone. The scandal had nearly destroyed his reputation. His company's board insisted he go through with a wedding, even if it was only for appearances to keep investors calm. So he agreed, until he met Laya. Something about her changed him. Her honesty, her strength, the way she cared for her mother despite her hardships. It reminded him of everything he had lost. Somewhere along the way, he realized he didn't want this to be fake anymore. That whisper at the altar wasn't just a line. It was his confession. For Laya, it was too much to take in. She didn't know whether to be angry, touched, or scared. She had entered this deal with clear boundaries, and now her heart was tangled in something she hadn't agreed to. That night, she left the mansion in tears. City lights blurred through the window as she drove away, her heart torn between confusion and longing. Days turned into weeks. Ethan tried to reach her, but she avoided him. She needed time to think, to separate truth from illusion. Her mother's health slowly improved. The bills were paid. For the first time in years, Laya didn't have to worry about money. But still, every night she thought of him. His voice, his eyes, his quiet acts of kindness when no one else was watching. Then one morning, a letter arrived. It was from Ethan. No expensive gifts, no flowers, just a handwritten note. In it, he apologized, not for loving her, but for putting her in a situation she wasn't ready for. He told her he had canceled $1 billion deal because he finally realized something money could never buy. A second chance at real love. He ended the letter with one simple line. If you ever find it in your heart to forgive me, I'll be waiting at the old chapel at noon, where it all began. Laya sat quietly, the letter pressed to her heart. Tears filled her eyes as sunlight streamed through the window. For the first time in her life, she decided to follow her heart, not her fears. When she arrived at the chapel, Ethan was there, standing by the same altar where they had once exchanged vows, meant only to deceive the world. But this time there were no cameras, no audience, no contracts, just two people and a soft breeze carrying the scent of blooming flowers. He looked at her, eyes shining with tears, and said softly, "This time, I'm not asking you to pretend." She didn't need to reply. The truth was already there, in his trembling hands as he reached for hers and in her heart that now beat with love. Not fear. She had finally found what she never thought she would, real love, born from the most unexpected moment of her life. Weeks later, they had another ceremony, not grand or public, just simple, pure, and filled with meaning. Her mother walked her down the aisle, smiling through tears, and when Laya said, "I do," this time, she meant every word with all her heart. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Thread, because sometimes love finds us when we least believe it can, and when it does, it changes everything.